Good morning, everybody. Thanks for watching. Today I'm going to be going over just a quick video on ways that you can prepare to go to a course or a match or something like that. Things to do before you actually show up to kind of guarantee success at the range and to prevent any kind of gear problems that you're going to have with your weapon system. And this starts prior to going to the range. And things that I do is I look up information about my rifle, more specifically the torque spec settings of all my stuff. And when I'm shipped a new scope, when I buy a new bipod, when I buy a new chassis or something like that, I always write down or keep the little torque spec cards that the manufacturer provides with me so that when I'm remounting something or switching scope mounts, I can always reference that when I remount it. And that just guarantees that you don't have any scope shifting or zero shifting or stuff like that. Your cheek piece collapsing on you in the middle of a stage or in the middle of a hunt or something like that. And so those are good numbers to have and to keep around. Other things that I do is I collect kind of tool sets, and these are great. I found these at Walmart one year, and it has lots of different bits, handy little screwdrivers, stuff like that. And they cost like $1 to $2. Really good find. And you once you start losing tips or stripping tips, you just toss them, buy a new one. These are good to have. I have a bunch of levels that I carry with me, a paint pen, uh, torque wrenches. I keep Loctite. I I keep a little bottle of lube, brush, and any kind of specialty equipment that you might need to tighten things on your rifle specifically. What I'm going to start with today is my chassis. This is XLR Element. I really like it. It's made out of magnesium, super lightweight, which is perfect for what my goals are in my hunting. I'm going to start from the buttstock and work forward to the forearm. Any kind of bolt that can be tightened down, any point of adjustment on this, I'm going to look at and I'm going to check it. And so these bolts that hold my cheek piece, if they were to come loose, my cheek piece could cant or collapse on me, and then I'll just be free floating in space back here. That's bad. So I'm going to check these hand tight. These are good. Something else you could do is with this paint pen. Uh, Once you've tightened it down, once you've set your cheek piece height, stuff like that, take a little paint pen and make a reference mark on each side of them. And that'll give you a quick visual indicator if for some reason your screw starts backing out, and it'll hopefully you'll cue in on it earlier and retighten it rather than it becoming more of a problem. Next, I'm going to move to my recoil pad, make sure that this is tightened down in there. Solid, solid. I have a sling swivel keeper and a bag riser, and so I'm going to check those. Good. This chassis uses AR parts, and so this is a regular castle nut from a buttstock for an AR, and so that requires a specialty equipment to or special piece of equipment to tighten it down. That's good, nice and tight. This is a standard pistol grip from an AR, and so I'm going to tighten that down. Good. My trigger well is held on by internal screws. Just going to give that a quick tighten down. See, that one was a little loose, so I'm glad that I'm checking it here. I'm going to go down to the fore end, and I have an Arca rail adapter and a Picatinny rail adapter. This is where a little bit of Loctite would come in handy. I would use blue Loctite, which is non-permanent. I Loctite these because I don't want my accessory attachments to come loose. And so I have blue Loctited those. Give it a quick, good, little loose, good. And that's good for the chassis. Next, I'm going to inspect my barreled action. This is a Remington 700 action. It's what I'm used to. I love it. Will I move on eventually? Yes. What I'm checking on this action. I'm going to wipe it clean, make sure I get any kind of debris out of the off the action. These are the mating surfaces for where it mates onto the chassis. So I want to make sure that there's no grime or grease or anything like that that can give that can foul up that mating of the action to the chassis. Now I'm going to move on to the trigger assembly. The trigger assembly in the Remington 700 is held in place by 2 pins, and they need to be pressed correctly. If they are over penetrating, they will come out of one side, and that can lead to your trigger not being pinned down correctly. Give it some play, and that's where you'll have misfires, failure to strike the primer pin, stuff like that. And then if they're pushed the other way, your bolt release, that little mechanism that you see springing back and forth will actually come out, and then your bolt will just come out the back of the action. Nothing's actually held in there. And so I'm checking the bolt release. Good spring tension. The pins look good. So I'm going to move on. Scope base. You can see there's 4 screws at the top of this. And so I'm going to check the torque settings on those. And for me personally, I have had a problem before where I thought I had a ruined gun, but it turned out that it was just the scope base. I had mounted the scope on there, so they kind of out of sight, out of mind. And I was having accuracy issues. I couldn't figure it out. I remounted my scope, all that stuff, and it wouldn't group. Finally, after I took the scope off and stuff like that, I saw the screws and it popped in my head like, oh man, I didn't check that. And so when I had went and checked the torque settings on those, they were off. And so after tightening it down, the accuracy of the rifle returned and everything was good. But because the scope is on here, they're kind of out of sight, out of mind. Some actions, these is a one piece to the action, so you don't have to worry about that. But for the Remington 700, it is held in place by the screws. I personally have mounted a 20 MOA base on here, and I don't plan on going to a 0 MOA ever again. So I have red Loctited this on here just because I felt very idiotic that I had problems with it. So I've red Loctited this one on here. Because I permanently want it on there. So I'm not going to check the torque settings because I don't want to bust that red Loctite, but I've checked it before and it's good. All right, going down the barrel, looking visually for any cracks, burrs, anything in this carbon fiber. It's good. I don't feel anything. Going to check my muzzle brake. Muzzle brake is tight on there. This is a Area 419 Hellfire self-timing. I don't have to torque spec it or anything like that. I just hand tight it, and it's never given me a problem. So I know that that's good. Next, we're going to mate the action to the chassis. All right, line the trigger up with the trigger guard. Line that recoil lug up. Going to install the action screws. All right, and then we're going to talk a little bit about this torque wrench. This is a great piece of kit. This is the Fix-It Stick multiple adjustable torque wrench. They sell 2 different versions. One that has a fixed poundage or inch pounds set in there, and then one with an adjustable inch pounds. I went with the adjustable just so I had to only keep track of one, and this has been really good for me. It adjusts to all the torque settings that I need on this rifle, and so this has been a very good investment in my money. The way that this works is, you can see here, it's got inch pounds, multiple settings, and you basically tighten it until you get to the inch pounds indicator that you want, and that's it. But what you're going to want to do is, I like to increase my torque a little bit at a time so it applies an even pressure along the screws. All right, so what I do is I tighten this finger tight until I meet a little bit of resistance. All right, a little bit of resistance. I do the same here. Little bit of resistance, and then I tend to go in 10 inch pounds every time. So I'm going to go here until I get to 10, 10, 20, 20, 30, 30. All right, like I said before, I've already looked up the action screw torque setting, what the inch pounds are, but if you can't find that information, go to the manufacturer's website and look it up. So if you're just using the stock Remington package, like, go to Remington's website and look for action torque spec settings. This is I went to XLR's website, looked up this chassis, and they recommend 45 inch pounds for that. I take that information, I write it down, and then I just slip this card into my toolbox. Vortex is nice. They send a little card like this that has all the information that you need for their rings. I just keep them written down, small little post-it note, and put it in my range bag, so that when I get to the range, or when I need to check these, it's already right there. I don't have to go surfing through the web. So I'm going to continue to tighten this down into 10 inch pound increments until I get to that 45. 35. 35. 45. 45. That one moved, so I'm going to do it again. 45. 45. All right, I'm good with that. So now my action is solid into my chassis. All right, I'm going to lay that down, and we're going to talk about external equipment. So the next thing we're going to go into is our bipod. Now, anytime there is a screw on your bipod, or if your mounting hardware screws to your tripod, bipod, any stuff like that, you're going to want to check it. Tight. That one's a little loose. Give it a little more. All right. That seems good. This has a little screw in there, so I'm going to check that. Good. All right. This is good. This quick attachment is adjustable, so I want to make sure that it I always go with, I need to give it a little bit of tightness. So tightening it only with one finger strength. If you have to wrench down on that to get it tight, it's too tight. You can damage your Picatinny rail. So I want to be able to tighten it with one finger, but maybe use two fingers to loosen it. All right, so that for me is good. All right, next we're going to mount the scope. Something I learned recently, I just recently changed to Area 419 hunting rings. Very good company, very accurate and precise scope rings. I'm a real big fan. But when I was reading through their mounting instructions, it said they recommended wet mounting. And I had never heard of that, so I researched it. And what wet mounting is when these rings grip onto the rail, there's a little bit of mechanical binding there that happens due to the friction of two metal pieces rubbing against each other. Sometimes that friction gets so much that it gives a false sense of being tight, to where the metal pieces are clamping together too tight that it actually, you think it's tight, but it's not really. And then you can bump it and it can become loose again. So what they tell you to do is get some lube, put it on a brush. This is already wet, I can see it. And they want you to get a little bit of lube on these rails where you're going to mount these rings. All right, I can see little gloss in there. And then you're going to lube the inside of your rings itself. Looks good. Now when you mount it on here and tighten it down, you're not going to get that mechanical binding, and it's going to tighten and clamp fully. All right. One thing I do when I mount my scope is I think about the recoil impulse of the rifle. And when that rifle is recoiling, the rifle is jerking back. Well, the scope is mounted separately onto the rifle. And so it's kind of just hanging out in space and has a tendency to slip forward when the rifle is going backwards. So as you mount this on there, if there's any front or back play, you want to push the scope rings forward in the mount as you tighten it down. These Area 419, you can see that there's no play in there. So these are really good, precise machined rings, but I'm still going to give it a little bit of forward pressure as I tighten it down. Swap out my tool, and the same thing, I'm going to finger tighten this until I meet a little bit of resistance. And then I'm going to start tightening it down in that 10 inch-pounds fashion. So I'm going to go to 10, 10. Going to go to 20. All right, I'm going to refer to my list real quick. And for the base of the rings, they recommend 45 inch-pounds. 35. 35. 45. 45. Now it's really important that if you see any movement at all when you get to the final thing, the final setting, that you go back and do the other screw. That one moved a little. That one moved a little. Because as you incrementally tighten it down, it will loosen up the other side. And so to get a good even grip on that rail, you need both of the screws, or 3 of the screws, or however many screws there are, to both be gripping that required foot-pound or inch-pounds. Foot-pounds would be crazy. All right, I'm happy with that. Now we're going to go to the top of these rings here. And what you want to do is tighten down one, and they say do a star pattern. So tighten here, tighten here, tighten here, tighten there. And you do a star pattern because you're wanting to tighten that down onto the scope uniformly. And so some guys will have a big gap on this side, and no gap. It'll be flush here on this side, and what that's doing is it's applying all the pressure down on one side of the scope. Once you start crushing that tube weird, the internal mechanisms that need to adjust for your magnification and stuff like that, you can kind of crimp down on that, and it will not let the scope work as it's intended to. So you want to get a good even squeeze on these rings. This is good. Refer to my list. 18. That one was good. 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 All right, we're at 18. Now, I'm going to check the accessories that are on my scope. So I have a MK Machining 3D printed polymer throw lever for this Vortex LHT scope. And I have the Vortex Pro level. Go to my list. All right, that one's tight. Switch out this bit. Good. And level is also good. That's good. All right. At this time, you could wipe down your scope lenses, stuff like that, to make sure that you're in the best running order when you get to the range. All right, that's typically the steps that I take with my weapon system prior to heading to any course or on a big important hunt or anything like that. Other things you can do is really clean your weapon system, but also remembering to clean the inside of your magazines. That's a really neglected piece of equipment, and that really has big impact on your weapon's performance. Everything goes off bullets being in your chamber, right? So that if those mags are messed up, you get failure to feed, stuff like that, it can really hinder your performance. So don't forget to clean your mags. Clean your barrel. Take this time prior to a course to clean your barrel. I would strip copper and I would strip carbon prior to going to a match or a hunt or anything like that. If you have any questions on rifle cleaning, go onto my YouTube channel and look up that video. I go through the process. I got really in depth with it, and I was surprised with some of the results that I got in my research of that. Cleaning it prior gives you the chance to refoul it. Don't forget to refoul a cleaned barrel so there's no surprises in your point of impact shift out there. While you're at the range doing that, get a good muzzle velocity. Try it. If you don't own your own chronograph, try and borrow one. See if someone at your local range can help you out by getting it, and get a good muzzle velocity for the round, for the lot of rounds that you're using for that course or that hunt. That will help your information in your ballistic solver be more accurate. One other thing I could suggest that you do is dry fire. Practice setting up your tripod. Practice going through the 8 fundamentals. Practice, practice, practice. The more practice reps you get, the more subconscious confidence you get in that action. So then when you go to that course, you can just think about the material being taught to you and not have to trip over the fundamentals for every shot. That's pretty much all I've got for this video. I just wanted to be nice, quick, dirty, and answer some questions you might have of what I should do prior to going to this course or on a hunt or something like that. So I hope you learned something. Hope this helps you out. I'll see you guys in the next video.